And I just want to thank Mayor Bass for being our first guest for this series today, and welcome her to the stage.
First of all, thank you, Mike, for the invitation, and congratulations for being at the helm of the Pat Brown Institute.
Thank you.
I do have to say that I have known of, respected, worked with, spoken with the Pat Brown Institute for many, many years. And Jaime Regalado, who I want to acknowledge, was a dear friend. And I remember when the Pat Brown Institute was formed, and he was a leader for a very long time. And for those of you that don't or did not know Jaime recently passed away.
Yes.
Let's see. We can go back and forth.
This one working now?
Oh, yeah.
All right, cool. Just needed a second or two to warm up. So I was thinking last night about how long I've known you. And I don't know if you remember, but I first met you in 2003. You were running for state assembly. I was working for Congresswoman Jane Harman, and you came in to seek her endorsement. And that's when we first met. You were still executive director of COCO. And shortly after that, you got elected to the state assembly. Then you became speaker of the state assembly. Then you made the...
Now, wait a minute. After I became speaker, I think like 2 weeks later, then the economy crashed. It was California, and then it was nationwide, and then it was worldwide. So that was my introduction. Yes, I do.
And then you were in Congress for how many years?
12.
12 years.
In Congress for 12 years.
And then you decided to come back to
No,
Los Angeles.
wait a minute. I chaired the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yes.
And we had COVID.
This is true. This is true. So during that time, you have held so many different leadership positions, from civic activist to legislative leader to now an executive, the second largest city in the country. I'm wondering what the adjustment was for you going from legislative leader, where so much of the leadership is internal, negotiating with colleagues, to this position where so much of the leadership is external.
Well, actually, I wouldn't describe it quite that way, because I think being in Congress, you play both the internal and the external role. And part, if you want to get anything done, you better organize externally, but also communicate externally as well. And so for me, you know, in this position, first of all, I feel like I have come full circle in my life for issues that I was working on, positions and roles that I had, being in the community, being in the state, being in Washington, D.C., I think has been very helpful, because I do know those other institutions and how those other institutions can help our city. And I think that one thing that I didn't see much in either place was a serious involvement from the city. There's lobbyists here, lobbyists there, but not a real attempt to organize and amass our power. So for example, in the county of LA, we have either 36 or 38 representatives in Sacramento. Well, there's 120 legislators. We represent a whole lot of power if we could organize that power. But certainly playing the executive role is different. Similar to Sacramento when I was speaker, especially because I was speaker in a crisis.
Have you had to flex different leadership muscles as mayor?
Sure. Different leadership muscles at different points in time, and just the vastness of our city, you know, is definitely different. Now, obviously, there's the vastness of the state as speaker, but again, it's a different position because I'm here.
When you got elected to the state legislature, Governor Gray Davis had just been recalled, Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor, Republican governor.
Yeah, then there was that.
Yeah. As you mentioned, the state was in a fiscal crisis, so many of the things that you probably would have wanted to do in good times, you actually had to protect rather than grow.
Well, no, it was even worse than that, because just to give you some numbers, the state budget when I went into the assembly went into being speaker was $120 billion. We had to cut immediately $40 billion from the state budget. State budget went down to $83 billion. Today, it is over 300. So my point was, the protection that I did
Yeah.
will sound a little odd. It was actually to make cuts because there was a lot of pressure to eliminate programs. And I felt if we eliminated programs, it would be very hard to get them restarted. I mean, just think about what's going on in Washington.
Yep.
The dismantling of major institutions like USAID. It's going to take generations for that, to come back. So I thought if I could fight to cut, then when the economy was better, the budget grew, the money would be restored, and that is what happened.
Right. And then you got to Congress, and for a good part of that time, the Tea Party was in the ascendancy. Part of that time, Donald Trump was president. You've, in those positions, been in a position where, because of the relative strength of other political forces, you had to compromise, you had to do a lot of consensus, and you're known as a great consensus builder.
I think any legislative body, you have to draw consensus and compromise.
Sure, but you have more of an absolute need to when you don't have the power as much, right?
Yeah.
So you run for mayor, you win in, people tend to forget this, you won with a huge margin of victory. I mean, you won with a big mandate. You had a council which was very progressive, a lot of new people elected to your left, a new generation of progressives with a new brand of progressivism. But you've spent a lot of time still reaching out to moderates, to
Right.
conservatives.
Right.
Did you feel that you had more latitude to not have to do that because you had so much political capital and you had so much room on your left?
Are you saying, no, I don't quite understand. Could I have just governed to the left? Or
Govern
that
more to the left, yeah.
No, I didn't. First of all, I think the ideological positions of the members of council are not very different than mine. The difference is how one goes about governing on a city level in this position that, in my opinion, is not that ideological. And also, if you're going to represent the entire city of Los Angeles, the entire city of Los Angeles, to me, is how I have to approach governing. There's pockets of Los Angeles, large pockets, my pocket, I mean, from where I represented in the state and where I represented in Congress. As you know, Mike and I used to, we overlapped territory for pretty much until you left office. And so on the weekends, we'd see each other at town hall meetings, and I saw the differences of how they dealt with him versus how they dealt with me. Well, you're right here. One difference is that the general public doesn't tend to know what Congress does and what the state legislature does, and then you're not here. So that's the difference. You're up in everybody's face every day, as am I.
I'm curious, I hadn't anticipated asking this, but based on what you just said about us being there and they reacted differently to you as they did to me, as you deal with the West Side, which is, a very actively engaged constituency, is there anything you learned as a sort of a cautionary tale about dealing with the West Side based on the dynamic you saw between me and constituents?
If you mean in terms of ideology?
No, just in terms of just sort of general dynamic.
Well, after Trump got elected the first time, my district was very frustrated. And they were frustrated with me, not because of anything I did, but it's kind of what's going on now. Like, why can't the Democrats do this? Why aren't the Democrats fighting back? What's going on? And really wanting me to jump on the bandwagon of impeachment. And I didn't believe that that was the way that should happen, and I didn't, and came under a lot of fire. My district also was Bernie Sanders, and I was not. But what I did, though, was I took all that energy and I created an opportunity for people to organize. You remember that? It was Sea Change. Because what I said to people is that you don't need to go to Nevada, you don't need to go to Arizona, you can go right up north and south. And we focused on the two Katies, as we called them, Katie Porter and Katie Hill. And everybody got their fight out that way. And it was helpful. Here, of course, you know, as a city council person and now as mayor, it's every broken street, every pothole. And I understood that. I mean, I knew that's what I was coming into, but I really believe that serving on both those levels has been extremely helpful.
Back sort of the theme of leadership. You've had high moments, you've had less than high moments. You got a lot of...
That was kind.
I want people to come to these things and be guests.
Oh,
So.
okay. We want to inspire you.
I'm walking a tightrope here. So you faced a lot of criticism over the response to the fires. You have received a lot of very positive acclaim over your response to the ice raids, particularly your showing up and getting in the face of the folks at MacArthur Park.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, I just got to say, that was a very spontaneous moment. I wasn't like, let me go out here, but I was really so enraged. And there had been rumors of the Army invading MacArthur Park ever since the raid started. Yeah. But when it actually happened, I was just enraged. And I also know the guy. I mean, Greg Bovino, not like I know him a friend, but I mean, we had been talking. I was actually supposed to meet with him, and I was going to go with the Archbishop, with a rabbi, and with a community leader. And, you know, it got cut off abruptly. But I just thought that was just so ridiculous, because I knew they weren't doing anything. Yep. I knew they were just there to terrorize people, and it just outraged me. The other time that it outraged me, too, was when he carried on in front of Governor Newsom's press conference. But it was on sacred ground. Yeah. It was at hallowed ground. It was the Japanese American Museum, which was the very location where Japanese Americans were, you know, hauled off into internment camps. I grew up with those stories, hearing my mother tell me what it was like to see her neighbors disappear.
When I faced public criticism, and I faced a fair share of it, more than a fair share of it, there were times when I got defensive, and there's times when I got reflective, and I thought maybe I need to do things differently. I'm wondering, based on the criticism you got from the fires, whether you thought it was fair or unfair, if there's any lessons about leadership that you learned that you've applied since.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, in terms of facing the criticism and all, and let me speak to that for a minute. As I understood the criticism, of course I wished I had never gone to Ghana. And it was interesting because a few days before I left, it was major news I was going. It was no vacation, and the invitation from the president's office, Biden, publicized it. But to be there, to be away when your city needs you, and not only that, to be far enough away that I couldn't just hop on a plane for 3 or 4 hours and get back. That was devastating. It was devastating personally to me that I wasn't where I was needed when I should have been needed. But I also understood people's anger. And I didn't take it personally in the sense that I know people weren't really, I mean, yeah, they were mad at me, but what they were more than mad at me was they were grieving. And it was a traumatic injury of what happened. Some literally, but more emotionally, the loss, the devastating loss from one day to the next. And I'm very familiar with grief and the grieving process and anger and needing somebody to direct that to. I understood. It didn't mean it didn't hurt, yeah. But it meant that I understood it and didn't take it as though, you know, it was all about me.
Any lessons learned from it?
Yeah, I mean, a ton of lessons learned from it in terms of how to deal with different neighborhoods when they do go through a shock, how to be there for them. And it's tough to be there for someone when someone doesn't want you there. You know what I mean? And how you navigate that. And then just the overall city. And of course, all that we've learned since.
So the other day, you got your first challenger in the race. Former school superintendent Austin Buettner got into the race. He did a 4 or 5 minute video outlining his vision, and he, among other things, he slapped Trump. But he He said he voted for you last time, was a supporter.
That was news to me.
So he wasn't a donor anyway.
Just saying.
But he said that his feeling was that the city was, I think the term he used was adrift. Clearly, I would imagine you would.
It's like, how could you say this city is adrift when this city went through a shock that hit every part of the city, multiple shocks this year. But the shock in June of being invaded and literally to have your federal government seize power from your governor and send troops out against our people. Not only is it unconstitutional, it was illegal. We had a temporary restraining order, the pall that was left over our city. But what I was so proud of for this adrift city was the way we all stood together, and there wasn't a crack anywhere. Meaning that, you know, you could have had one side of the city going, yeah, get rid of all those people. But we are a city of immigrants. One of the things I love about, and I always, when I, you know, the years I spent in DC, I would always brag about our city and our state, of course. But because there's certain issues that are not controversial. Immigration is not controversial. Climate change is not controversial. And so I feel that our city has been unified and fierce. We set the example for the entire country. And I was sharing with Madam President that I was at a press conference a week before schools opened. And it was so profound, such a profound moment, because the superintendent of schools organized this press conference to encourage parents and kids to come back to school and to reassure them that LA Unified would protect their children from what? Gangs? Violence? No, their own federal government. And I felt we were a petri dish, and it was an experiment. I knew it was going to travel. A few days after the raids, that Monday actually, I was on a Zoom with over 130 mayors. The rest of the country is looking at us, the world. I do interviews, international worlds. And in a few months, we will have the World Cup. Well, actually, we have the All-Star basketball game, U.S. Open for golf for women, then the World Cup. And to me, the most important thing we need to be doing is building unity, unity, unity in the city and collectively preparing to go forward. I don't want to see our city described locally the same way our city has been described nationally. When the quote-unquote riot happened, you know our city's 500 square miles and it was a few blocks. But the picture that was portrayed, the whole city was on fire. Those of you that were here or remember 1992, that was a riot. What happened down here was bad. I'm not downplaying it. But
I
it
was
wasn't the
arguing
city on fire.
with high school classmates from Massachusetts about what was happening in Los Angeles. They were insisting that the
They
city
knew.
was on fire.
Right.
I'm like, I'm here, dude.
Right.
It ain't happening.
Well, there is a few TV stations, I was going to say one, but it's more than one, that was the portrayal.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
Yep. So when folks like Buettner or others use the term adrift, do you think they're fundamentally misreading the electorate, or do you think there's something there that they're tapping into that you need to respond to?
Well, I mean, you know, I could respond to the myriad of problems that we have in the city. Right now, we talk about it all the time. The point is, we want to solve those problems. The question is, how do you solve those problems? I don't think you solve those problems by painting a picture of misery. And painting a picture as though, you know, I guess we should all pack up and move away. I think our city is in a great place from the point of the people. I am not in any way, shape, or form minimizing any of the myriad of problems that we have. And you know, I ran because of that. I didn't run because I was tired of Congress. I actually loved being there because I was able to work on domestic and foreign policy issues as well. But I ran because I was really afraid of the direction that the city was going. And I wanted to be a unifying factor within the city because I know, as Angeline knows, we can conquer everything and we can solve any problem. But one of the most fundamental things you need to do that is to bring people together.
You talk about why you ran. When you were running, when you first took office, you said declaring a state of emergency over homelessness. Homelessness is my number 1, 2, 3 priority. And I heard reaction to that focus two ways. I heard a lot of people saying this is exactly the kind of focused leadership we need, realizing this is the issue. And then I heard others who've been around for a while saying, man, a mayor doesn't have
Good luck with her.
mayor doesn't have the luxury of focusing on one issue.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, you've been hit by tidal waves, well, everything but a tidal wave, really, since you've taken office.
Don't say that. We did have a tsunami warning. You remember that a few weeks ago?
This is true.
Of course we have a tsunami warning. But let me... No, go ahead and finish.
So have you ever said to yourself, as
Why the
this
hell
other
did
stuff
I do
hit,
this?
did you ever wish that your aperture had been a little wider
Oh,
going
no.
in?
But, I mean, come on, Mike. You know this. Yes, I say it's an emergency and it's my focus, but you know good and well that was for maybe 2 hours. I focus on 20 different issues, which I love, by the way.
Yeah.
20 different issues in a day.
Yeah.
The point was to put things in place, and to me, my mandate, and it continues to be, is street homelessness. I know it's going to take a while, but I believe this, no critique, but I believe, frankly, that the city was not committed to ending homelessness, but was managing it. And I don't know if people thought, and I don't mean just the city, I mean everybody, and that I don't know if they thought it was going to just go away. But let me just say a couple things. New York City has 80,000 homeless people. 97% of them are in some sort of shelter.
Yep.
I believe that we did not spend the time thinking about that because of rigid ideology that said housing first, which I of course believe you want to pull somebody off the street, but taking people whose lives have completely fallen apart and putting them in a house with very little of any support, that is not a recipe for success. And so to me, I believe that the first thing to do is get people off the street into interim housing, but long-term interim housing, but address the reason why they're there. And one of the biggest gaps, see, push my button, I know you're getting me off this time, but one of the most significant gaps that I found was no definition of services. You know, we have multiple service providers, I'm gonna just say 15, I know there's more than that. No real standardization, evaluation, outcome-driven, why are people falling in and out? And so I knew I was coming into a system that was profoundly broken, because I've worked, 1993, when nobody cared about homelessness because it was just South Central and Skid Row. We were trying to get people off the street by putting them in motels in 1993, and everybody thought we were being ridiculous. You need long-term interim housing, and you need a comprehensive approach to services. My background, I've worn many hats, but one of them was in the medical field. And the general health of people is just neglected. Substance abuse and mental health, like those are the only two things that are the problem. When I've run into people with cancer and heart disease and diabetes, and people die in interim housing because they don't have comprehensive services. And I'm not blaming the service providers. They do not have the capacity, they're not supported to have that capacity.
I have more to follow up on housing and homelessness, but there's one other political question I wanted to ask before I forgot.
What's that?
And I think it's an important one. I don't think it's talked about enough. Is there is in this country a sort of racist trope about women of color in office, in public life, where they're all DEI candidates, or they're not smart enough, they're not competent enough. Your former opponent, Mr. Caruso, has been hitting you relentlessly and pretty ruthlessly since the fires started, while the city was on fire, constantly using the term competence. Is he playing into those tropes at all?
You answered your own question.
Next.
I think it was Barbara Walters who said when someone doesn't answer, you're just supposed to stare at them until they do. But I think you will outstare me on that one. So let me shift to housing. You know, this institute that I've run is named after Governor Brown, the first Governor Brown, who did many amazing things, and one of them was he really fought for fair housing. He took it on the chin and lost a statewide ballot proposition about fair housing. It was later validated by the courts. It was one of the things that he really pushed for. There have been, in the camps of folks who've been critical, there have been folks from the two housing camps, really. The pro-density camp, which was not happy with your position against SB 79. The housing justice activists who haven't been happy with your position on ULA or exempting some single-family neighborhoods from ED1 or the CHIP program. Can you share how you think about and navigate these issues of density and affordable housing, particularly as it pertains to sort of the legacy of housing injustice in LA?
Sure. Yeah, and you know, sometimes you put policies in place to move something forward, and then you find out there's bottom feeders who then try to exploit that. And usually when the exploitation occurs, it's in lower income areas. And so it was important to me to not just say, everybody do whatever, wherever, whenever. The other thing for me is that, you know, my background is a community organizer and activist in South LA. And one of the things that we organized about all the time in South LA was people coming in and putting things in our neighborhood that left us feeling completely disempowered. So what I believe is that the best way to get housing built, and obviously you know, Mike, that I believe that we need to build as much housing. I mean, I just said we don't have interim housing for homeless people.
Yep.
So if I feel that way about people on the street, understand that I know how unaffordable this city has become. And for those of you folks who are younger, this city actually used to be very affordable, very affordable. But that is long gone. And so we absolutely need the density, we need the numbers, but I think that the best way to build is to build with community and get neighbors to come to some sort of compromise. And there's many examples of that. And I think one of the compromises in general is the commercial corridor. I don't know if you've been down Crenshaw lately.
Sure, yeah.
But what Harris Dawson, the council president, has done to Crenshaw, he's totally transformed Crenshaw.
Destination Crenshaw.
Destination Crenshaw, but the residential areas look the same. Now, granted, people are being priced out just because of the general market here, but they didn't choose the density. I actually have never talked to him about it. But obviously, I mean, you can see it. You drive up and down Crenshaw, there's apartments after apartments. And the commercial corridor, even though none of us are happy about it, the commercial corridor was kind of dying. And so you have both. And I think that that is the best way to go.
So part of the way some people have thought about that issue, right, the concern about the exploitation by the bottom feeders
Yep.
of lower income communities is that, well, that means you really need to force high opportunity areas, wealthier communities to take more of a share of affordable housing. And those are communities, I mean, I know from hard-earned experience, those are communities that are very, very well-resourced and will put up a long fight. And some of them take their positions in good faith, and a lot of them don't, right?
Yep.
At what point do you say, okay, enough is enough? I mean, this is a horrible scar on the city. We need more housing in your neighborhood. Step up.
Well, I think you say that from the very beginning. The question is, how do you step up and how do you place the housing? I always pick on Sherman Oaks. Sherman Oaks, well-resourced, do not want apartment buildings in their residential areas, but promotes the commercial corridors. And as you know, every neighborhood is different. Every neighborhood is different. The difference in the lower income areas is that they do not have the resources to fight back. So they're just wiped out. Balancing the city is tough. I don't want to see the city divided either, and neighborhoods going, after each other. I remember the secession movement. But so, I think that there's a lot of ways to do that. I support it. Where the differences lie as to how you achieve it.
Yep. So that leads me to another question. I was on the fence about asking it. I already got a come on mic, so I may get one now. But there's one particular affordable housing project I should ask you. Venice-Dell, you got it. So for those who don't know, Venice-Dell is a 120-something unit affordable homeless housing project on a public parking lot in Venice. The city approved on my watch in 2021. The city got sued over it by opponents and prevailed. Some other elected officials, the council member, city attorney, have opposed it and have stood in the way of it. The city is now engaged in more lawsuits to essentially try to stop it or prevent it from happening. The housing department from the state sent a letter to the city just last week. I saw it this morning. Pretty harshly critical of the city's standing in the way of the project being built, and saying that the city wasn't sufficiently considering its commitment or its obligation to affirmatively further fair housing, and was jeopardizing its pro-housing status or designation. So I guess the question is this, given the homelessness crisis, how does the city justify spending money on lawsuits and potential legal exposure from the developer to prevent already approved housing from being built?
Okay, former city council. You know that those decisions are made at the council level. I mean, I'll talk about my role. They're made at the council level. And the general culture of the council is, if the council person does not want it or wants it, the council goes along, whether it's something crazy or whether it's something good. And so I think what was being asked of me was for me to step in a way that as the mayor, and where land use decisions are made and how they're made at the council level, I thought was not really going to be productive or work. And so what was important to me was the commitment around affordable housing, which the councilwoman says she has, and she has alternative plans as opposed to one plan. And lawsuits come from both sides, and you know that. So you're going to wind up in a lawsuit regardless of where you go. The other thing is, and we're in charter reform now, some of these issues need to be taken up in the charter. How land use is done needs to be taken up in the charter. One of the problems I have is the rule of 15 when this is a city. And so it's very difficult to have a citywide vision when the council people are essentially in charge of land use. The other victim is, the other problem here is term limits. Now, I'm not saying term limits should go away, because that's just politically, unfeasible. But the problem is that you can't get any real planning done. Like the city's infrastructure is falling apart and has been falling apart for decades. And I asked some of the old timers, how did this happen? I wonder what you think, Rick. Because to me, everybody know Rick Cole, he's on the Pasadena City Council.
He'll be a future guest of the On the Record
That's why he's here to see how he does. He does really well. So some people peg it, which I wondered, at term limits. Because because I remember when I used to come up here with 200 people from South LA supporting or opposing something in city council, we would go to the downtown mall, and it was wonderful. It was where everybody hung out. I went down there and it was like, an after war zone or something. And so it's hard. You can have an infrastructure plan for the city, but then the new mayor comes in and tosses it out, or as individual council members say they don't want it. And so one of the things, I know what the problem is. I admit I don't have a pithy answer right now, but I did raise it at the Charter Commission in their first meeting, that we need to look at how do we deal with the city infrastructure, but take it away from elected officials. Because, you know, a 3-term council member, the first term you're learning your job, the second term you're doing your job, the third term you're running for your next job.
Well, you said the hell with it, I'm packing it up and leaving.
Well, there you go. There you go. And it's the same thing with mayor, except for this one, because this one is not, this is the last rodeo.
Let me ask one follow-up, and then I promise I'll move on.
Okay.
I get the thing about, well, the local council members' opinion is generally deferred to in the city. Except this was a project that was already approved, not something the council member was weighing in on, should we do it? And this is a case where the city is now spending millions of dollars and jeopardizing its status with the state. Doesn't that elevate it above that to now being on your desk?
Well, no, it's been on my desk from day one. I think the way people wanted me to weigh in or not has been the ongoing issue. Again, there is, I mean, we can argue over the legitimacy of it, but there is an alternative plan. And because of the way we are set up, she had the ability to intervene in that approved plan.
I said I'll move on. So, but if you want to hear more on this, the next episode of LA Podcast, I'll further discuss this.
He'll tear apart everything I just said. See this, and this was a.
I get the last word.
But that's true. But what I feel bad about, though, is that I know that this was a project that was near and dear to your heart. You put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in there, and I'm sure it was very difficult to see someone come in and overturn something that you had worked on for a long time.
Well, my thing always is, okay, you find another location, great, let's build both of them, right? I think you just need as many as you can get.
I agree.
So we can do both. I want to ask about the Olympics. You mentioned the games coming, so many things coming. I was part of the council that voted for the Olympics deal.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, I got some questions for you.
Well, and I raise this because I've had lots of second guessing of that. I started voting against parts of the implementing agreement in my second term. I said, there's no way, Nithya Raman and I said, there's no way we're voting for this security agreement. This is nuts. And this is before we knew that it was going to be Trump who was going to be president. Given everything that is going on, given that the security apparatus for the Olympics essentially puts Trump like in charge of law enforcement decisions, right? They have the designation of
Innocent.
right. I've started asking myself, and I'm curious your thoughts. What really does Los Angeles possibly get out of hosting the games that justifies the hell and the turmoil that we're going to be subjected to as a result of Trump being in office?
Now, this agreement was agreed to, when was it agreed to?
2015 or so?
So let me just say that I think that to have the Olympics here is going to be phenomenal. It will be the largest Olympics ever, over 200 countries to our international city coming here. The potential economic gain is huge. A few of my commitments around the Olympics is for this to be citywide, not just the venues. One of the beautiful things about Paris was probably 2% of Parisians actually went to the games, but you felt like you were a part of the Olympics from the time you stepped off that plane, because there were so many community events and activities, and all of that is income for neighborhoods all over the city. I want, when you land at LAX, you got a QR code and you know what's in Watts, and you know what's in Pacoima and East LA and all over. And that is a way of elevating our city in the world, but it's also a way of helping all of our neighborhoods economically. We've been hosting small business summits. The last one was over 1,000 people there. We have another one in a week, October 23rd. Is going to be at the Convention Center. Please come if you know small businesses. We're trying to get the businesses ready to contract for whatever the contracts are, so that they would be ready. There's a concerted effort to help all parts of our city from the Olympics. But let me back up to the security.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what you guys were thinking. There is, but
Remember, I voted no on the security part.
But there is no way a president and an administration is not going to be front and center for this. It's like if you've ever been to New York for UNGA, United Nations General Assembly. You have all of those nations there, and you have security from a federal level. You have security from a federal level for the Super Bowl, which is in 2027. So what were you guys thinking about who was going to do the security if it wasn't going to be the president and the federal government?
We knew the federal government was going to be doing security, but the fact that we gave so much authority away to the federal government and sort of deferred our ability to really veto anything.
See, but I don't know if you gave it away, because it would have been taken. I mean, you just don't do an event like that. The local just does not have the authority, to me, on a major national security events, the threats of terrorism, all of the things that could go wrong. One of the things I worry about, and that's, by the way, one of the things that I've been fascinated about our city, as big as we are, we don't have a real national security consciousness. Like, I remember when Russia invaded the Ukraine, and I was talking to some local elected officials, and I said, so what are you guys doing to prepare? And they looked at me like, oh, Russia's not gonna come here. I'm like, are you kidding? Russia's here every day. I mean, it's cyber, the potential cyber attacks that could happen. And so now, maybe what we're thinking about now, given who's the president, is the huge role that I'm sure he is going to take.
With ICE.
But we weren't thinking about that then.
Well, because when we voted for this, one of the things that was a big discussion was repeating the successes of '84 and not repeating the negative consequences of '84. And you know them better than I, where people will tell you about young people being locked up for days, homeless people being swept out of the city.
I don't.
I mean, Marquise talked about it at council about stuff that happened in '84, and there was a real concern to take precautions to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Do we have any ability to do anything to prevent Trump from just doing that?
Well, he showed us no Olympics. I mean, basically, by the time I'm waiting to see if the Insurrection Act is going to be implemented and adopted, which could happen at any time, which then basically would legalize, even though this administration doesn't need the law, they will do whatever they want to do anyway. So that is a huge threat, but this is going to get played out next year. This isn't about the Olympics. This is about the World Cup. The World Cup has a wider audience than the Olympics does.
Your staff and mine are giving me the signal, so two quick ending questions. You mentioned the Insurrection Act. I can't imagine this is a question you were ever asked when you were running for mayor, but given everything that's going on, the threats that President Trump is making, the things that he's doing, has it ever occurred to you, or is there any level of concern at all that you or other elected officials in Los Angeles might wind up getting arrested?
Sure, but I mean, again, it's not the first time. We could talk about that. Of course, I mean, the investigations that are going on now, I mean, I have letters from the Secretary of Treasury, the Government Reform Office, the Senate is doing an investigation. There's a lawsuit, they're suing the city around Sanctuary City, but they've named me personally and the council president. So, and he said he'd arrest me. I mean, and Holman said that as well, even though he's the one that stole $50,000 in a paper bag. But anyway, yeah, of course it does.
Yep.
But that's, that has been, I've been a fighter all my life, and I will continue to fight.
So that leads me to my final question. I started my first question by talking about your arc from community coalition through the state legislature and into Congress and now mayor. You You started Community Coalition, you were an organizer, you were an activist, you were on the outside. There's now a lot of young generations of organizers and activists who are very impatient with the government and don't think the government is moving fast enough or is aggressive or ambitious enough about stuff. What do you think the Karen Bass of the 1990s would think of what the Mayor Bass is doing, and what would you
that's funny.
and what would
Yeah.
you tell that person about what leadership is like on the inside?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's so funny you say that, because in 1990, when I started Community Coalition, it was very controversial and I was very criticized. I was criticized for selling out because I was focused on the crack cocaine epidemic, and the left at that time wanted to talk about the CIA. And I'm like, okay, Congress proved the CIA had some involvement. Jim Newton knows that. And so I said, okay, the CIA is involved, but people are dying on our streets from crack cocaine. Homelessness was changing demographic. Prior to that, the homeless in downtown, where the demographic was a 55-year-old white man who was an alcoholic. It never dawned on me that he was homeless. I just thought he was drunk and didn't go home. And so I left and said, what is going on now is such a profound crisis. I can have my ideology all day long, but that is not going to help that person who's dying on the street. And so, you know, one of the things that has been most rewarding in my life has been working with younger people and nurturing their leadership. And that was one of my goals at the Community Coalition, was to start it, build it, train the leaders, and then leave. And to see them ascend the way they have. And so I feel that way about the new elected officials. I remember when AOC came into Congress and the squad started, a number of us who'd been around the block, you know, surrounded them and tried to help them, because from our point of view, they had almost gotten elected accidentally, meaning they didn't do the traditional. I think a lot of them didn't plan on actually winning. They were running like we used to do in my day, which nobody thought about winning. You were just running to make a point. But then they wind up in office. And so my view was, they're there. They're elected officials. It's incumbent upon me to do everything I can to help them make that transition from activist to governing. And one of the things that I would say is that you have to decide if you want to make a point or you want to make a difference. If you want to make a point, that's the realm of activism, and it's extremely important. But I was also older when I first ran for office, but it was a very conscious decision on my part that I was leaving the world of activism, I was moving into governing, I was going to have to compromise on things I had the luxury of not compromising on when I was in the city. But my mission and my focus had to be the goal. So ideological battles I could have, but that was not going to define. I mean, for example, and I'll end here. For example, in Congress, people pass resolutions and motions for world peace. I didn't do that, because I was trying to get something done. So you can be in these positions ideologically. Actually, you can as a council person and a local elected official. But you have to decide, are you serving your ideology and what makes you feel good and popular and a celebrity because you get clicks or likes or whatever it is? Or do you actually want to make a difference for the people on the street, and that transcends your ideology?
Can also overlap.
Yes,
Yeah,
sure it does. Sure it does.
This has gone by way too fast. I could go on for hours. I have so many more.
We should just go to dinner. Why don't we go to dinner?
Well, you know, I can't remember if it was a mayor or a police chief who used to do a monthly Ask the Whatever on radio. So if you would like to do this monthly, I'm happy to come to you.
I just said I wanted to take him to dinner.
We can eat at the same time. Anything you'd like to say in closing?
No, except for it's great to see you. I appreciate doing this, and appreciate the opportunity. Always appreciate the opportunity to talk in a substantive way to Angelenos.
Thank you. And we have a gift for you. And on behalf of Cal State LA and the Pat Brown Institute, if President Eanes would join me, we have a gift to share with you.
Thank you very much. Ooh, uh-oh. Oh, he dropped the mic.